Think for a moment about the hidden world of secret messages. The kind of stuff flying under the radar between governments. Sounds like pure fiction, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like something straight out of a spy novel. But back in the early 20th century, it was very, very real.
And right in the thick of it, for the U.S. anyway, was this outfit called the Black Chamber. Pretty evocative name.
It really is. And it was largely the creation of one man, Herbert Yardley. A fascinating character, mostly self-taught and code-breaking.
Okay, so let's dig into this deep dive. It's not just about the, cloak and dagger excitement, though there's definitely some of that.
Right.
Our mission today, using Yardley's own book and some historical context, is to really understand how the first big U.S. code-breaking agency started, MI8, and why it suddenly just vanished.
It's a story with some surprising twists, really touches on government secrecy, how nations dealt with each other back then, the dawn of modern espionage, really.
So what got Yardley into this in the first place? It wasn't like a government assignment initially, was it?
No, not at all. It was pure personal fascination. He'd read historical accounts, stories about codes and ciphers, and he just got hooked. He felt America was missing out, wasn't playing the game.
And trying to learn about it sounds like hitting a brick wall at first. Goes to the Congressional Library. Nothing much. Looks into Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, Poe was apparently more about the mystique than actual complex cryptanalysis. Yardley found his methods pretty basic.
So he ends up with just a simple army pamphlet. That's it.
Pretty much. It really shows you how he had to teach himself, piece it all together. He wasn't given the resources. He had to kind of create his own curriculum by getting his hands on real embassy messages in D.C.
Which leads to this incredible moment. He cracks Colonel House's code, the one used to talk to President Wilson.
And he does it fast, like under 2 hours.
Wow. So imagine being him. You've just figured out the president's private line is wide open. What do you even do with that information?
Exactly. It's a heavy realization. He understood the power, the danger of knowing that. And interestingly, he chose to keep quiet about it initially. Showed some early discretion, maybe.
Then comes World War I. America gets involved.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Yardley's hobby isn't just a hobby anymore.
Right. It becomes a national security imperative. This is the moment MI8, Military Intelligence, Section 8, is officially born. His personal passion gets institutional backing.
But it wasn't easy setting it up, right? I mean, where do you find trained code breakers in the U.S. at that point?
You basically didn't. That was the huge hurdle. They had to build that capability from scratch incredibly quickly. They relied quite a bit on help from the British and French initially.
And they recruited academics, relying on their, what was the phrase, native intelligence.
Yes. I love that phrase. It suggests they were looking for raw brainpower, problem-solving skills, rather than formal cryptographic training because, well, there wasn't much of that around.
And they got results pretty quickly. I read they even found flaws in the U.S. War Department's own codes.
They did. Prompted by a heads-up from the British, actually. It showed they were learning fast and weren't afraid to point out vulnerabilities even close to home.
So MI8 grows. It's not just about code breaking, is it? They had different sections.
Oh yeah, it became quite diverse. Code compilation, obviously. Communications. Shorthand deciphering, which is fascinating in itself.
Shorthand, wow.
And the secret ink laboratory. That sounds particularly intriguing.
Tell me about that secret ink.
Definitely. It shows they were tackling all sorts of hidden communication. They had chemists, document specialists. They even brought in people skilled in forgery and counterfeiting.
Forgers? Really?
Yes, because they needed people who understood inks, paper, how to detect alterations or hidden writing. They learned a lot from the British on this too.
And they were actually finding spy messages this way, like this Madame Victorica case.
Oh yes. Madame Victorica was a German agent, and they uncovered her network partly through detecting secret ink in her correspondence. They were processing thousands of letters a week looking for this stuff, even before formal censorship kicked in. It was a huge, hidden part of the war effort.
Then there's the PQR cipher, the German burn all documents code. Sounds critical.
Absolutely huge. Cracking that gave the Allies incredible insight into German espionage plans and their attempts to destroy evidence. General Churchill, the head of U.S. military intelligence, was apparently very impressed. It was a major coup for MI8.
So it wasn't just military codes, they were looking at diplomatic traffic too, trying to crack Spain's codes, for instance.
Definitely. Understanding diplomatic chatter was vital for strategy and foreign policy. They knew they needed insight into what other nations were planning or negotiating.
And they were willing to go to some length, like planning to send someone to South America just to get a Spanish code book.
It shows their determination. If they couldn't break it mathematically, they'd try other intelligence methods to get the key materials. Very proactive.
And the ingenuity to get around censorship.
Yeah.
Madame Victorica, again, hiding codes in commercial cables.
Brilliant, wasn't it? Using the first letter at each word to stand for a number, then linking those numbers to a standard commercial code book, a message hidden in plain sight. Very clever.
Then you have this almost comical story. The Mexican general.
Oh, that one's classic. Sends a coded message asking his contact to arrange a meeting with two of the best women.
Okay.
And then in a separate uncoded message, sends the key to his cipher.
No, he actually sent the key.
He did. MI8 just had to put the two together. It's a great reminder that espionage involves humans, and humans make mistakes, sometimes very embarrassing ones.
And what about the U.S. Navy? They weren't keen on MI8 at first.
No, they initially wanted their own separate code-breaking unit, but apparently it didn't work out too well, and they ended up having to rely on Yardley's team quite a bit. Expertise eventually won out over inter-service rivalry, it seems.
So Yardley's work expands, even goes to London during the war.
Right. To liaise with the British Cipher Bureau, Room 40, share knowledge techniques.
Was it smooth sailing? Did the British welcome him with open arms?
Sounds like there was some initial, maybe reluctance, a bit of who is this guy. But Yardley apparently proved his skills, even supposedly breaking one of their own army ciphers, which likely helped build rapport.
He meets Admiral Hall, the head of Room 40. And Room 40 was famous for cracking the Zimmerman telegram, right? Although Yardley wasn't there for that specific event.
Correct. The Zimmerman telegram was arguably Room 40's biggest triumph, massively impacting the war by helping bring the U.S. in. While Yardley's London trip was later, just being in that environment interacting with people like Hall must have been incredibly insightful. It highlighted the huge strategic value of this work.
But he had less luck with the French Black Chamber, La Chambre Noire.
Seems so. Even with introductions, they were apparently very tight-lipped. The French had their own long tradition of this kind of work and were, perhaps understandably, protective of their secrets, even from allies.
And after the war, at the peace conference in Paris, Yardley's still involved.
Yes, he was there organizing secure communications for the American delegation. And there's even a story about MI8 deciphering chatter about a possible assassination plot against President Wilson.
Wow, even at a peace conference. Shows the tensions were still high.
Absolutely. Peace negotiations don't always mean everyone has peaceful intentions. Constant vigilance was needed.
And he ends up buying German diplomatic codes in The Hague because the Allies wouldn't share theirs.
Apparently so. If official channels didn't work, he wasn't afraid to, let's say, explore the open market. Resourceful, definitely.
So the war ends, MI8 is officially wound down, but the work continues. Secretly. In New York City, the American Black Chamber is born.
Exactly. Funded secretly, operating out of a townhouse. Their mission shifted squarely to diplomatic communications, reading the telegrams of other nations now that wartime censorship was gone.
Which sounds risky. Operating outside official military structures.
Very risky. Legally ambiguous, potential for huge scandal if discovered. They were intercepting commercial cable traffic, essentially.
They even cracked some early Soviet communications from a downed plane in Latvia.
Yes. That anecdote gives a fascinating glimpse into the post-war world, the emerging Soviet state, and the immediate interest in understanding their intentions.
But the really big target became Japan. Cracking their code sounds like a major undertaking.
Oh, enormous. It took them about a year of intense effort. Japanese codes were complex, and the breakthrough involved help from an unlikely source, a former missionary who knew Japanese.
A missionary. How did that happen?
He provided crucial translation and contextual understanding once they started getting fragments. It highlights how diverse skills are needed in intelligence, and cracking those codes yielded significant results, like the message detailing Japan's plans to evacuate Siberia.
And it wasn't a one-time win, was it? The Japanese kept improving their codes.
It was a constant battle. Cryptography is an arms race. As soon as the Black Chamber broke one system, the Japanese would introduce a new, harder one. They even hired a Polish cryptography expert at one point.
A Polish expert. So it was truly international.
Absolutely. The Black Chamber faced codes like the JP system, which used code words of uneven lengths, really tricky for analysis back then. But they eventually cracked that too, providing vital intelligence during the Washington Naval Conference.
And they weren't just focused on Japan, right? They were reading mail from lots of countries.
Oh, yes. The book lists quite a few. They had a global reach, reading diplomatic traffic from Latin America, Europe, Asia. A truly international intelligence operation run out of a New York brownstone.
There's that close call, too, when they helped Bruce Bielaski with rum runner codes. Nearly blew their cover.
Yeah, that highlights the danger. Getting involved in domestic law enforcement, even tangentially, risked exposing their main, highly secret mission of reading diplomatic traffic, a delicate balancing act.
And the story about analyzing the Vatican's code, the director's reaction.
Yes. A moment of levity. Apparently, the director, upon seeing the decoded Vatican messages, was rather scandalized by the internal church politics revealed and ordered them to stop working on it. Shows how personal sensitivities could intervene.
But the work was seen as crucial. The example of uncovering bribery involving an ambassador.
Right, that case demonstrated the value of continuous monitoring. You don't just wait for a crisis. Ongoing analysis can uncover corruption, illicit deals, things that wouldn't otherwise surface.
Then the final, almost unbelievable irony. The State Department asks for help with a Peruvian code.
Related to the Tacna Arica dispute.
And in doing so, the Black Chamber realizes the State Department's own codes are incredibly insecure.
It's amazing, isn't it? The very department tasking them was using easily breakable systems. A classic case of overlooking your own backyard while spying on others.
Which brings us to the end. 1929. A new Secretary of State comes in, Henry Stimson.
Yes. He's briefed on the Black Chamber's activities in New York, and his reaction is not positive.
He was shocked, disapproved.
Profoundly disapproved. He felt it was unethical, improper for the U.S. government to be reading the private diplomatic correspondence of other nations, especially allies, during peacetime.
Leading to his famous quote,
"Gentlemen do not read each other's mail." That really sums up his stance.
And just like that, he pulls the funding. The Black Chamber is shut down.
Closed down October 31st, 1929. Ironically, right as the stock market was crashing, the plug was pulled on America's primary signals intelligence agency.
And Yardley, out of a job, no government pension because the work was secret.
Exactly, which led him to write the book, The American Black Chamber, partly to tell the story, partly, frankly, to support his family.
And the book was a sensation, but controversial.
Huge bestseller, people were fascinated, but it caused a massive stir revealing state secrets. Interestingly, it sold incredibly well in Japan, supposedly more copies there than in the US and UK combined.
Really? Wow. The Japanese must have been very interested in what he revealed about how their codes were broken.
One can only imagine. It certainly would have spurred them to completely overhaul their cryptographic security.
So, wrapping this up, what a story. It shows the U.S. was deep into code breaking much earlier than many people think, largely thanks to Yardley's drive.
Incredible ingenuity, real successes, but also this fundamental clash over the ethics and propriety of it all, leading to that abrupt end.
And the real takeaway, maybe the aha moment, is how this story from the 1920s highlights tensions that are still incredibly relevant today, right? National security versus diplomatic norms, privacy.
Absolutely. Those debates haven't gone away. If anything, they're more complex now in our digital age. The core dilemma Stimson faced is still with us.
That's the perfect place to leave it for you, our listener. Think about that balance. How much intelligence gathering is necessary? Where do you draw the line on privacy and sovereignty? How has that line shifted since Yardley and Stimson's time? What does this tale of the first Black Chamber make you think about government secrecy today?